today's Leadership Lounge. Thank you for joining us on a Monday morning. It's a little bit grey outside, so it's nice to be on here as a group together. As always, please do pop your questions, any comments, any thoughts into the chat box as we go through the session. We're going to be taking you through today's session on performance management. So we're joined by Chloe Liddon, who's the head of people. She'll be taking us through the session and some of the tools that you have available as leaders and managers. And then we've got a few guests on with us. So we have Maria Valencia, Alex Betts and Lucy Spain as well, joining us to talk through some of their experiences of performance management and some best practices they've used both here and in other businesses as well. So hopefully we should get a good mix of people and content for you. And then at the end, as always, we'll have a chance for a bit of a Q&A and a chance for you to leave your thoughts, ask questions to any of the panelists or any of the hosts, and then also any questions that you might have in general on how to start implementing it with your team. We are recording this session and this will be posted on the Academy later today as well. So if you or someone in your team or one of the managers that you manage perhaps have missed the session and you think it would be really useful for them, by all means just prompt them to go on and have a view of it as well. And we'll put the link on the new terminal as well, which went live today in the Leadership Lounge section. So if you haven't already visited it, there is a page dedicated to the Leadership Lounge where you'll find all of the information and the tools that we talk through today on this as well. So on that note, then I'm going to hand over to Chloe so that she can start us in the session. Chloe, over to you.
Thanks, Sheila. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining. I'm going to share my screen now, hopefully. Let's have a look. Great. Okay. So performance management, first of all, I think it's important to say this is a kind of informal, optional session where we are kind of giving some tools, tips and tricks, but at this stage, this isn't sort of a company pushed framework. It's just a recommended framework and hopefully helping managers understand the importance of good performance management and how beneficial it can be for the business, for employees and for you as managers. So yeah, as Sheila said, please ask as many questions as I'm going through and happy to answer anything. So first of all, what is it? It's a pretty massive topic and it's something that an hour session probably doesn't even go far enough on, but there isn't actually really one definition for performance management because it's lots of different things, but it tends to describe activities which establish objectives through which people can align themselves to the bigger picture and to the company goals. B, improve performance. It's kind of in the name, but it drives this high performance culture and should improve individual performance. And C, holds people accountable. So this is really important. So that's where we look at things like linking performance to career progression and promotions, to things like bonuses, salary reviews, and then on the kind of other side, when things maybe are less positive, when we're having to have difficult conversations, conversation should never be a surprise for anybody because performance management should have meant that they are very aware that their performance was not up to scratch. So there isn't one definition, as I've mentioned. You'll have probably seen it done in lots of different ways in lots of different businesses. And I think what's key about performance management is that it has to align to an organization's culture and what they're trying to achieve. So it will be very, very different in a kind of fast-paced fintech business like us than to perhaps a more corporate, larger blue chip company. So you will have seen it done in different ways. There's no right or wrong way, there's just different approaches. And not only does it vary by company, it can also vary by team. So the way you might performance manage a sales team was probably going to be quite different to a marketing team, just for example. And I think that's okay. And I think it's recognizing that there's different approaches. There's not just one that's right. So that's kind of whistle stop tour of what it is. The other important thing is, I think when people think about performance management, sometimes their mind goes to the annual review, the annual appraisal. I've called it the dreaded annual review because I am personally very anti that sort of concept. But I think what's important is that since probably 2015, so the last 5 years, performance management has shifted a lot to what it used to be, to that once a year review. Lots of leading organizations kicked that off about 5 years ago, as I mentioned. So things like Microsoft, Adobe, Google started thinking about it in a different way. in a more continuous way and in a process that doesn't really stop. And it's not it's December, here comes HR with those horrendous 8-page forms that I need to fill in for my team, and more of a continuously through the year, having those conversations, so regular check-ins. What's crucial is those conversations are underpinned by regular, honest, yet supportive feedback. We've got a couple of our values in there. I think that's key. In the same way that we moved from kind of biannual engagement surveys a couple of years ago to Office Vibe, where we frequently check in with people, there's sort of no point giving somebody feedback 10 months later. So I'm sure we've all had that annual review where your boss brings up something that didn't go quite well, like 10 months before, and what can you do about it then? And also, how demotivating. So I think the key is that this regular feedback that you're able to make action with at that time and in that moment. And then the other part that's kind of really important is we at Payment Sense really want to drive this culture where individuals take responsibility. So they should want to better improve business processes, maybe that need improving, or their own skills and their own contributions. They should always want to do more. That should drive from them, not from you telling them to do that. So you'll kind of see the wheel on the right hand side, and it's establishing expectations, it's continuously coaching people, and it's creating that accountability. And that doesn't stop, that goes continuously round. Great managers don't just set expectations at the top, they carry them through, and they continuously talk. So I think that's really, really important when we think about what performance management is. And just like it's not once a year, it's not just one process. And that's a word that I know Payment Sense, we don't really love that word here, and I don't really love it in this sense either. I think it's better to think of it as a number of different activities that are integrated together. And they can often be a mix of more formal activities and then more informal ones. So your kind of regular one-to-ones and how are you conversations. Your role as a people manager is crucial in these activities. So it's no longer, again, like I said, HR are coming, here come HR, they're gonna force me to do this paperwork that, like, let's be honest, probably manager and employee don't really enjoy. We want you to own it, to want to do it. And one of the reasons why we're talking to you today is for you to understand kind of the benefits of that and why it's beneficial to do it well, and that it doesn't need to be this horrible admin headache at all. So it's kind of all sounding like a lot probably, and you're thinking, oh, it sounds like I've got to do lots, it's regular, there's lots of different activities. So I think it's important for us to think about why you should bother. And the reality is there's lots and lots of reasons why. I've kind of summarized the two big ones, but the first one is it's better for business. So if employees have kind of clear expectations, clear goals, understand how they're performing, they tend to be more productive, more motivated, and ultimately profitable. Not only are they more productive, but they're actually doing things that really matter, that contribute properly to company strategy and goals. And actually, there's some research on the right here from Gallup. If you don't know Gallup, they're a huge analytics research organization in the US that help leaders make better business decisions. And their research found that only 2 in 10 employees strongly agree that their performance is managed in a way that motivates them to do outstanding work, which is pretty low. And I think the key here is that if you do this well, employees should want to do more. They should want to go above and beyond always. So it's better for business and it's better for employees. It's a huge frustration point for employees when they don't know what's expected of them. And when they don't understand their goals, I think they can end up feeling quite conflicted about their responsibilities. And disconnected ultimately from the bigger picture, from the company, and we'll see people become disengaged in general with the company. So it's really important for employees to understand that. And also there's this kind of transparency point and understanding where they stand. I mentioned it earlier, but if things aren't going so well, an employee should know that should have come out, that should be in their one-to-ones, that should be in their objectives, that they're maybe not hitting their objectives, and they should be given an opportunity to do something about it. And if we do need to make difficult decisions, it's not a surprise. So it's really important that you help them understand where they are. The Gallup study found that actually clarity on expectations was basically one of the most basic needs of any employee. So it's crucial. And yeah, retention. Those not receiving feedback are more likely to leave their jobs. That's ultimately how it goes. I think we probably all heard the expression, people leave their managers, not the company. And I think a large part comes from not having that feedback. And the other part is this growth and development. And, you know, again, on the right here from this Gallup research, I've put in this kind of emerging expectation. So what workplaces and people want is very different now to what it was. So my paycheck, you know, pay remains important, but actually now more and more people are looking for their purpose, where do they fit in the organization, how can they contribute? And if you're not having these conversations, they can't understand that. You're no longer their boss, you're their coach, you're there to help them and support them in development. It's no longer this annual review, it's this continuous ongoing conversations. And it's actually no longer my job, it's my life. And I think this one's a little bit sad, but I get it. More and more people, it's not just a 9 to 5, it's their passion, it's their, they invest a lot and they want to grow, they want to develop. It's kind of super, super important to people. And again, like these kind of good performance management process will help people. It will find those people that are ready for the next steps. And if they're not ready, it will, you know, those conversations will bring to light what they need to do to get ready. So that's why you should bother. It's really, really important. So where are we at Payment Sense? Sort of in a mix of different activities across different departments. And as I mentioned earlier, that's okay because there isn't a one size fits all for each team. But I would say there's probably some teams who are doing less of this and some that are doing more. And I think what we would like to get to is that everybody's doing something. And actually, feedback is one of our lowest scoring areas on Office 5. We do okay, we're at a 7.9, but we could definitely do better. And I think the stats here show that 20% are dissatisfied with the frequency they receive, feedback they receive from their managers. 24% don't actually think the feedback's relevant, it doesn't help them improve. And yeah, 16% don't feel it's specific. So there's definitely work we could do as a company, and hopefully some of the kind of frameworks and tools we're going to talk about today can help you. So today we're going to look at 3 parts of a recommended framework that we recommend you look at as managers. The first one being performance goal setting. So shortly Sheila's going to talk through the differences between a quarterly objective model and monthly KPIs, and sort of talk about how to do each of those well. Monitoring performance, so it's all very well setting the goals, but if you don't then check in with them and see how they're getting on, they become a bit pointless. So we're going to look at regular one-to-ones. We're actually going to walk you through a demo of Office 5's new feature, because it can be really powerful to help you with that. And then developing performance. So I think a lot of people are looking for this at Payment Sense. It's these personal development plans, it's these wider goals, these career goals, and how we can help them kind of better themselves. There's 2 elements we're not going to talk about today that still form part of this. The other one is evaluating performance. So if you've been here a while, you may well have done a 9-box grid for Jack. So that's thinking about where your team are in terms of performance and potential. And then the other one is rewarding performance. So tying performance to, as I mentioned, promotions, bonuses, commissions, salary reviews. And I do want to say we don't have a kind of set, it's July, everyone's going to get their salary review and their 3% increase. That's not how we do it here. We have a more flexible approach. And we want managers to own this, be proactive in this. So if you have got someone in your team who's excelling, who's, you know, kind of all their goals are being met, you know, and you suddenly think, oh, I wonder if we're still paying them market rate. You know, are we paying them what they're worth? That's for you to kind of, you come to us, come to the people team, we can help you benchmark, but we want that to be more proactive and to really justified, rather than, oh, here comes July and everybody gets their 3% review. I will say, as a people team, we do audit salaries every month. We capture anybody that hasn't had a review in a year, and we let managers know, just to make sure that we're kind of helping you with that if you've got large teams especially. So those two elements are for another day, but I think today we're going to start with this. So we're going to start by looking at performance goal setting, and at this point I'm going to hand over to Sheila to walk you through the KPIs and OKRs.
Brilliant, thank you, Chloe. That's really good. So I want to kind of go through now that first piece on performance goal setting and making sure we're clear on, firstly, the differences between the quarterly and the monthly, and then secondly, just some guiding questions that should help sort of start to get that thought process in place for you when you're starting to define what they are and how best to do them as well. So we're going to start with a bit of an overview. So if you want to go on to the next slide for me, great, thank you. Just an overview on the differences between the two. So you've got what we call an OKR or a KPI. So two acronyms, both of them focused on setting goals within the team. One of them, KPIs, you've probably heard to death, key performance indicators, and then OKRs, which is a bit more of an up and coming terminology. I suppose it's being used a lot more, particularly around sort of product and tech areas, but it's the objectives and key results. So I want to go through the differences for the two, but overarching both of those is vision. And it's really important that as a team manager, as a people leader, that you have a vision that you've got in mind for your team and what it is you're actually striving to do. And I'm not going to go into it too much today about how to do that, but we do have a previous session. So if you are interested in going through the previous leadership lounge, which talks about that, you can do. But overall, you should know what you're striving to achieve. And within that as well, you should know what the company is striving to achieve. Now, we're working on the company vision and values as well, and we'll be releasing those in due time. But what you'd do then at that point is you'd have your team one at the top, your company one at the top, and your team one underneath that, what it is as a team you're doing. And then from there, you can really start to define what your KPIs or your OKRs are. And the differences between the two are that the KPIs are more about the kind of business as usual. It's the here and now. It's how do we make sure we're achieving what we need to achieve today and in the business now. So that typically is kind of a monthly KPI that you do. And for some departments, some teams, you might even align that to bonuses and commission payments. But you should have key performance indicators that tell you we're on the right track, we're doing okay. And you should know when you're below those performance indicators and when you're above them as well. So that's maintaining the status quo. And you can see there I've put it's more kind of processes driven. Your OKRs are more about the future. So that's more about advancing the business or the team or the department. And it's about defining and measuring still, but it's looking at how do we actually get to our vision? How do we move it forward? So OKR stands for objective and key results. So at that point, you're defining what the objective is and what the key results are to get there. But it's not as specific as the kind of day-to-day, have we hit this sales target? Have we hit this CSAT score? It's more about where do we want us to be in the future? And those ones are typically a bit longer term, so maybe a quarter or annually as well. So looking at then how do we actually start to implement them and do that. If we go on to the next slide, what I've started to do there is put together just some examples first, and then we're going to look at some questions to help you get to this point. But as I said, the OKRs is more growth orientated. So it's more about how do we actually get to our vision. And it should be a strategic framework for you and your team. So what you need to do is, first of all, define what your objective is, and then what your key results are that go underneath that. And I've given you an example here of field sales. As you probably all know, I work quite closely with them, and this is kind of how we would define those if we were to put these into key results. So our objective is qualitative. So what we mean by that is it's more on kind of a vision, a feeling, something that's not necessarily statistical in terms of improvement, but that we know that we want to achieve. So often, and for the last couple of years even, our objective has always been to grow the field sales team so that we have the largest distribution channel in the industry. So as a company, what we want to do is be able to release Dojo and sell our new products, but we need our distribution channel to do that. And by having the largest distribution, we achieve that company goal of growing Dojo and really launching that into the industry to become a market leader. But the key results that sit behind that then are the measurable things that we can do in order to grow that field sales channel. And they're not actions, and that's really important to note here. And they're the key ones. Key is in this one, and it's in KPIs, because it really defines, we're actually looking for the top ones. So typically with an OKR, you wouldn't have any more than sort of 3 to 5 key results that you're looking to achieve your objective. And those key results, for example, with Field, would be something that's measurable, but decrease seller churn by 20%. Increase new starter onboarding by 50%, resolve 90% of seller issues on the first touch. Those figures are made up for this example, but that gives you an idea of what we mean by key results. So they're not the actions, they're actually the outcomes, and they're measurable outcomes. So in order to grow our field sales channel, we need to make sure we retain our sales force, and we need to make that better than what it is today. We need to make sure that we increase the new starters that come on board. So how do we increase that? And then we need to resolve our issues with them on the first touch. So again, that we can retain these people and keep them in the field. So by looking at those key results and working out then from those key results, what actions can we take, we start to hit our objective. Now, those things aren't easily done, as I said, they happen over time. If I was to set that in a month, I'd be setting my team up for failure. So you have to look at that over a longer period of time, and you have to think realistically, does the team have the tools and the capabilities and the skill sets to get to this point, and who would they engage in order to do it? And for that reason, I would say OKRs are more kind of, well, as we said, strategic. They're for the kind of bigger projects and the things that you can actually help drive in the business. So be mindful of that when you decide whether it's an OKR that you need to set or a KPI. But the next slide has some questions which I've given you as a guide for writing both sides of them. So for your objective side, you need to have a look at, is it broad enough in outlook? Is it stretching for us? Is it something that will drive the business forward and help us achieve that vision? And is it inspiring enough? You need to have objectives or visions that are really inspiring to your team, that actually makes them want to kind of fulfill that purpose of what you brought them in for. And like Chloe said previously, that's one of the big drivers now for people when they look for roles and new workplaces is, are they actually going to serve a purpose in the organization? Does it help you achieve the company goals? So yes, I think the example that we gave there helps us achieve the company goals. Does it align with the strategy that you're doing? And is it indispensable? If it wasn't to happen, would that set us back in achieving our goals? Well, yes, it does. Then that's the right one that you want. That's the objective you want to set for them. And then having a time box on there. Time box in terms of knowing kind of at what point are you going to measure it, whether at the quarterly point or it's going to be a continuous one that you keep reflecting on, but checking you're working towards it. But you need to have time measurements on there as well. And that goes across all of these OKRs or KPIs. And in terms of your key results, then the things that you'd want to look at for your key results is, does it adhere to SMART? Anyone that's been through leadership training would have gone through a SMART framework. It's always about goal setting that's specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound. So do the goals that you're actually setting, do they meet those criteria? Just ask those questions. Is it specific enough that they know what I mean here? Is it measurable so that they know when they actually achieve success? Can they action it? Do they have the tools, the skill sets, etc. at their disposal to be able to do it? Do they have a timeline on it? And is it relevant, like we said? So you should be able to hit those by looking at the objective questions as well. Is it a result, or is it just another task or activity? So again, just making sure that it's an output. If we think back to that previous example of it, the tasks and activities involved would be to make sure that we have a sales support team are able to hit their metric of dropped calls. That helps us achieve the seller touch points. In terms of retaining sellers, do we have the management structure and the support structure there to make sure that people have the support and the development they need? Do we have training and coaching available for them to develop them in their roles? All of those are tasks and activities, but the result is reduced seller term, increase in sales, first seller touch, all of those things we mentioned. Does it help achieve the objective it belongs to? It's all very well having this really great overarching objective, and then you set a completely different key result that doesn't actually help achieve that. So always ask, would the impact of that impact the objective? Does that help us get to our goal? And is there a timeline identified? Does it belong either to a stretch or an operational goal category as well? So knowing the difference between the two. And is it important enough to appear in the top 5 key results for the objective? So really important, like I said, that the key word there is key results. So it's identifying what are the top priorities. If you're just putting it in there for the sake of putting it in there, you're not going to achieve your objective. You're probably not going to get full buy-in from your team member, and as a result, it's going to fail for both you and for them. So just making sure it's important enough to be a key result as well, and it does push your guys to develop and push forward, which is in effect what we're trying to do when we set an OKR. We're looking for that growth piece. Moving on to the KPIs then, key performance indicators, really typical kind of way of measuring goals, and a lot of people have used these for a long time across the entire business. But again, keyword is key. It's a key performance indicator, so picking out the top ones, and these are all about the output. So it's output orientated, and it's measurable, it's quantifiable, and it's something that helps us today, business as usual. So typically you'd use your KPIs in a monthly scenario. Works really well with any teams that are using targets or bonus payments, like we said, or commissions. It's a really great way to see that. Or if you're implementing a project or a pilot and you want to see how it's going at quite a frequent time. So it's good for you to be able to say, right, these are our KPIs that we're going to look at and keep an eye on. So again, using our field sales example, I've put some areas of KPIs. I haven't specified the exact KPI, written it out. But for example, within field sales, the key performance indicators, some of the things that we look at different levels, but we look at what the average number of docs in or lives are per seller. So making sure that we keep those high tells us that we've got a sales force that are going to stick with us because they're getting paid and they're active in the field. Looking at the error rate for applications as well. So when we work with our stakeholders in provisioning, we're making sure that the error rate is correct. And again, that feedback loops into, is the training correct? Have they understood it? Are there things that are being held up from third parties, from our suppliers or our acquirers that are delaying the applications? Is there something that we need to address there? The total LTR, lifetime revenue, that we use as well, so how much are we making? We look at the LTV to CAC ratio as well, and that's more at a higher level, strategic level. But again, we're looking at that on a monthly basis. How many productive sellers do we have, or how many new starters do we have at any one time? So they're kind of key performance indicators that we're in a healthy place with our field sales channel, and that helps us ensure that the BAU is being delivered, as I say. So again, there's a way that you can look at starting to word these key performance indicators. So you identify areas that you want to work on, and then you start to put those into KPIs that you can use with your team members. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see there that I've put a little bit of a method that you can use for writing really effective KPIs. So it's action, detail, value, unit, deadline. Okay, so if you use this method, these 5 words, action, detail, value, unit, deadline, if you hit all of those when you're writing your KPI, you should have an effective KPI at the end of it. If you want any help, by all means reach out, and I can always help you with your wording on them if you want to be really clear. But if we start with action, it's words like increase, improve, implement, reduce, decrease. Those words are all the action. So what is it you expect that person to do as a result of setting this KPI? You expect them to increase the number of sales, for example. You expect them to improve the revenue generated per seller. You expect them to reduce the number of customer churn or decrease the complaints that we get in. You know, they're all things that are an action. And the detail there, you probably heard some of the words there, but examples of detail that we would use across the business would be things like increase leads, increase lead conversion, increase sales, reduce churn, increase LTR, increase LTV, improve the CSAT score, reduce sickness across the business, increase or improve engagement, increase or improve NPS scores. So all of those are the details. So what is it you're expecting them to do off the back of the action? And then the value, so that piece that makes it measurable is by X% or by X number or from X number to X number, making it just very clear what that value is and what you expect from them. And then who is it that you expect to do that? So is it people in the business? Is it new starters? Is it customers? Is it new customers? Is it the payment consultants? Is it employees? So just being very clear on who it actually applies to. And then the deadline that you're setting for it. So is it in a month? Is it in a quarter, in a year? Is it by a set date that you want to see this improvement? So if I was to piece that together and to come up with a KPI, I could say on there, increase sales by 50% for all new starters into the business by the end of the year. And there you go, I've got an effective KPI that's hit all of those things, and I've been able to set a very, very clear goal for my team member. They now know that's the output, and they need to work on the action that they're going to do to get there, and what things they're going to implement in order to achieve that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea on how to write them. It's very high level. You'll see in the resources at the end, I've linked a couple of courses that help you go a bit more into how to set effective OKRs and KPIs. But on that note, we can move on to the next slide. And that's over to Chloe.
Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, so I've just, what we've done here is created some templates for you to use depending on which model you think is best for you. So if we first look at this OKR model, what we recommend is that for a business like Payment Sense, where I'm sure you guys agree, we're a fast-paced, agile business, quarterly probably feels about right. And so we recommend setting quarterly OKRs with your teams. Now, as Sheila mentioned, there's pros and cons of different ones, and I'd say this model probably works better in non-kind of sales and ops roles. It probably works better in like the support teams, maybe it's marketing, finance, technology, and yeah. So what this document on the right-hand side does is documents these objectives. So really, really simple Google Doc. All of this is available on the terminal, by the way, which I'm really excited went live today. And what we recommend you do is set an overarching longer term vision. So I've got an example here, which is enhance and improve our internal communication channels to better inform and engage Payment Sense people. So that's, as a manager, what I would expect in this example, somebody like Hannah to be doing in her role. Now, what I think is crucial is that then you allow the employee to define their own objectives that will help them reach that expectation. Now, by all means, you provide the context, you agree them with them so that they're totally not off track and what you want to achieve. But it's very well known that we are far more likely to accomplish goals that we set ourselves. So I think if you just hand some objectives to somebody, they're not going to feel inspired and they're not going to feel particularly motivated. Where if they've decided them themselves, they are much more likely to want to achieve them. So give them ownership. Your job is just to give the context. Check them, make sure that they're correct, as I mentioned. But yeah, help the employee understand why it's beneficial for them too. If they've got clear objectives, that should help them prioritize their workload. It also, if they're doing them very well, should enhance their opportunities for career advancement and things like that. So there's benefits for them to have these objectives too. You want to get that buy-in. Keep them flexible, as I mentioned, quarterly feels right, but I think, we all know some things can change here more frequently than that. So I think it's just having that understanding between your employee and you that, sometimes I've set something like this and a month later, someone in my team and I, we've thought, actually, that's probably not quite relevant anymore a month later. So we just adjust them, we tweak them, and we keep them flexible. And that's the joy of a Google Doc. You can do that. And the other really key point I want to drive home here is that when you do come to that end of quarter and you're reviewing the objectives, make sure you recognize the work, right? This is, it kind of becomes pointless if you're just like, right, cool, tick, 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 let's do the next ones. Recognize them, acknowledge it, shout them out in public channels, shout them out in your team meetings, make them feel like it's worth it and it's good. Otherwise, again, it will probably just be a bit of a pointless tick box exercise that isn't motivating. So that's your first one. As I mentioned, templates are on the terminal. There's further guidance, and just reach out to me if you want any help putting these together. But yeah, hopefully here you can see a kind of example of launching your improved internet platform, which has happened even sooner than September 30th, with kind of key results. So 80% of people logging in at least once a week, and our Office Vibe scores increasing by X amount. So hopefully that gives you a good example there. On the other side, there's monthly KPIs. As I mentioned, probably typical, you see them more in maybe sales roles and customer service, where there's these kind of key targets and metrics. On the right-hand side is an example of one that Tracy works with on the customer service team. So she can help you with that. Again, this template's going to be on the intranet to kind of look at those specific KPIs. And as I mentioned here, for example, like quality of calls and tickets, CSAT, and the customer service team. So You would quite simply use monthly sessions to review the progress of the previous month and then agree what the KPIs are for the next month. So those are a whistle-stop tour of quarterly objectives and monthly KPIs. Now, it's all very well doing that, but then if you don't ever check in on it, again, it's just pointless. If you don't monitor that performance and look at it, there's no point. So what we suggest you do is have regular one-to-ones. Now, regularly is a fun word. We could all take that in different ways, couldn't we? Recommendation is minimum of monthly. As I mentioned, things change here a lot. So I think if you're not doing at least monthly, you risk becoming quite disconnected. And I actually recommend you do it a bit more frequently at the moment, particularly whilst we're all remote, or when you do generally, if you manage remote workers in the business. So you're not seeing them day to day and you're not having that day-to-day conversation across your desks. So I think it's important to do it more frequently, maybe weekly or bi-weekly. You should be using these one-to-ones to provide them regular feedback. As I mentioned earlier, like, you know, if something didn't go so well, let's not wait 10 months. Let's talk about it then. Let's give them the chance to improve it. And also, and equally, when things go really, really well, give them that feedback to make them feel valued and appreciated. When you're looking at their objectives and their KPIs, are there any blockers? Are there things that you could help them with? And then just agreeing actions. So just more the day-to-day, the month-on-month, what needs to be done. And what we're really excited to show you now is Office Vibes' new functionality to help you track these one-to-ones. Now, this is something I was piloting with my team. Sheila's been doing the same. And we've actually found it really, really useful. So we are going to attempt now, probably my least favorite part of this webinar, a little demo of how to do it. So if I come out of here and I go into Office Vibe. So hopefully you can all see my screen, Sheila, all good? Yeah. So what you've got here is a search bar. Now I've got everybody in the business here, but just to give you an example, if you've got a larger team, you can start typing their name, and I'm going to use Sheila as my example here. So I am the manager of and Sheila's the employee. So if I go to Sheila, you'll see something called one-on-one. So if you click into that, it will pull up your profile with the employee. And there's lots of tips and tricks on Office Vibe to help you with this. But what you will find is, what you can do is set an agenda. So you can call it something. So let's call it the monthly one-to-one, the weekly one-to-one in this case, and the date. And what's really brilliant, probably my favorite thing, is that you can set this into your Google Calendar. So you'll see I've scheduled one with Sheila for this Wednesday at 10 o'clock. If I wanted to have that repeating weekly or bi-weekly or whatever it was, it would do that. And as I mentioned, that will ping into your Google Calendar and it will prompt you and remind you when you have upcoming one-to-ones. And what you can do is add talking points. So up until this weekly one-to-one with Sheila, I've been thinking about things that I want to chat about. So I've put in here, create slide deck for the next leadership lounge, the terminal, and I can add in any talking points. And again, as I mentioned, what's really powerful is that Office Vibe will email you to say, your one-to-one with Sheila is coming up. Do you want to add any other talking points? Make sure it's all up to date. So yeah, is a really, really useful tool. And as you go through the one-to-one, you can assign action items. So whatever you might agree in that one-to-one, you can agree that that's the action for Sheila, and then that will all get stored here. And you can tick them off in your next one-to-one, hopefully when that's done. I'm going to pass over to Sheila now to show you kind of the other side, what it would look like as an employee.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. So on my screen, you should see emails, hopefully. Is that on there, Chloe?
Yeah.
Thumbs up, cool, perfect. Okay, so I've just filtered it for obvious reasons, but you've got on here, Office Vibe sends notifications. So you can see I've had a few. I've done some with Chris on my team and Chloe's one-to-one that you've just seen scheduled on there. I get a notification as a team member to say it's on there, and if there's any changes as well. So if I click into it, I can go on there and it says take time to review what's new. So Chloe's made some changes to your one-to-one agenda. So that means she's added something in or she's suggested something new to do. So as a team member, I can click onto it, review agenda, and it will log me into my Office Vibe account. And I'm viewing it now as if I'm one of the team. And you can see here down the left-hand side, I've got feedback, I've got one-to-ones, action items and goals. I'm on the one-on-ones at the moment, and I can see here the one that's been scheduled and who it's with. So Chloe set it, and it's our first meeting. And if I click into it, I can see exactly what she just showed you around the content, but I can also add something in. So I could say to her, I want to talk about the new starter induction, and I could add that in. And then Chloe similarly gets an email as well to say Sheila's added something to the agenda for it. As we go through it as well, actually in the session or after the session, we have a function to add action items as well. So I can add, as I'm going through the meeting, whether on Zoom or when it's face-to-face as well, and just write what the actions are. So it's just new, and then I can just literally start typing, and I could put, I don't know, review feedback of induction. And that's my, with bad spelling, but that's my action to go ahead and take then. And I can also go in and I can add a due date if I want to as well, or Chloe could go and do that as my manager and add in a due date too. So it's a really good place to use them. Like I say, like Chloe said, we've started using it with our team, so I find it's a lot easier. And the team go in now and actively put in their own actions and their own agenda items as well. Cool. That went quite smoothly, Chloe.
It wasn't so bad, was it? Nervous for nothing. Right. Cool. So yeah, that's Office 5. If you want any help with that, Sheila's kindly created a really great video to walk you through that as well. But if you want any further help, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you. So the final piece we want to talk about before we talk with our guest speakers is developing performance. So this is probably, you might well think of this when you think of performance management as well. So it's your personal development plan. This is a less frequent conversation. We probably recommend it happens every 6 months or so. And you can see on the right here an example template, again, that we are going to make available to you and is already on the internet actually to help you have these conversations. Again, this should be an employee-led activity. If you think about a session, you should think you should be listening about 70% and talking 30%. So listening to what they want to do, where they want to go to, and then taking that accountability for their own development. Schedule it in advance by all means, but make sure they've got time to prepare, that you don't just spring it on them one morning. They've got the template, they can come to it armed with ideas, and it's very hard to suddenly think on the spot about what you want to achieve in the next 6 months or longer, or your career goals. So that's really important. And then the other really useful thing that we really recommend you do is underpin it with 360 feedback. So by all means, put your feedback as a manager in, but what's even more powerful is collecting feedback from different areas in the business, peers in the team, stakeholders they work with, and giving that to the employee to help them think about where they can develop. I think Maria and Alex are going to talk about this, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's so useful to do. It can be quite hard to identify your own areas for development, and I think when you're given constructive feedback, and the key is constructive, that can help you think, actually, yes, sometimes I don't do that quite so well, or I would like to improve that, and find that area for development. So there's a place on the form to put the feedback from the peers, from stakeholders, and from your manager. And again, think about maybe giving that to them in advance. It does depend on the individual, I'd say, but I think if you have a thinker, or you've got an introvert in your team, again, having feedback sprung on you in a meeting and suddenly then having to think about, oh gosh, somebody said that I'm not very good at this, and it can be not that productive, I think. So think about sending them to that in advance, and then they can come armed with ideas. But yeah, you'll see here it says, please provide 3 things you want to master within the 6 months, and how that's going to help contribute to our mission. So I think, again, the key is they think about what they want to achieve in the next 6 months, and you provide the business context. So there's no point somebody coming up with 6 wacky goals. It's great, 3 wacky goals, but they don't actually do anything for the business. I think you need to help steer them, guide them, support them. But yeah, don't direct them, let them do that themselves. Also, don't feel like you have to have all the answers. It's okay to say, I'm not sure, let me check, I want to come back to you. You're not expected to have all the answers, and Commit your support. So you'll see there is a section there to see what you'll do to support them, whether it's helping them start a new project or get involved with something, but also make sure they take responsibility. This is their development and they should take that ownership. So that's really, really crucial. There's also a section, you can't see it on the slide here, but for identifying training opportunities. I think that's something people ask about a lot. So there's a great place to store that. And I'm actually going to pass over to Sheila now to kind of talk about the different opportunities that you might be able to discuss with your team.
Brilliant, thanks, Chloe. So these are just a few training tools that we have available now in your repertoire to start using. But when you go through your personal development plans and people start to identify areas and skills that they want to improve on, it's important as managers that you know what you've got available to utilise as well. And by all means, reach out to me or anyone in the team to find out in detail about any of these things. You have our online toolkits, so you have LinkedIn Learning. It has 16,000 courses on there in a variety of topics across sales, product, technology, marketing, data analytics. There literally is something for everyone. So it's always a good place to start, particularly as an introductory modules to skill sets and things. But it also, I don't know if people realize this, it's actually got recognized qualifications that they team up with. So they take things from recognized programs and qualifications and utilize that training material as well. So there's a lot of content that can be used there. We also, we use a content mapping specialist over at LinkedIn as well. So we just tell them the skills or the competencies that we're looking for someone, and then they map out a program and all the courses that relate to it as well. So I've done it already for a couple of people in the tech team, and I've done it for some people who are looking for leadership and management for some of their aspiring leaders as well. So please do reach out, let us know what skills or competencies you're looking for, and we can come back to you with a mapping basically of courses that would suit that are available. You've got the Academy online as well, so that on there has more of our kind of internal product related information, so we build that ourselves with our learning designer. But for particularly now while we're going through the Boost transition and then over to Dojo, it's really useful if people want to learn more about what we actually do as a business and how we do it. We have an apprenticeship scheme. Currently, the live program that we have is it's an ILM qualification, so the Institute of Leadership and Management. But I have levy funding that can help us use apprenticeships in all areas of the business. So if you're looking something from the finance team, or you're looking for something for the marketing team, or you're looking for something for a product or tech, please do reach out, because there's apprenticeships that we offer across a variety of different mediums and different industries and specialisms that we can help you with as well, and we can find a provider that suits you and utilize that as well for you and your teams. We have our leadership lounge for leaders and managers. We have our Mind Couch series now as well, so they're soft skills development for people. They're sessions that they can come in and join, and then we have resources that complement each of these sessions as well, so they can get more on that. And we do external qualifications across the business. It is down to the manager to approve it and sign it off. With any kind of external qualification, there is always a cost, and you need to think about time commitments as well. But again, if you want any help sourcing a good external provider or qualification, or just whether that's the right thing to do, please do reach out. It's always good to set up some kind of coaching. We've used it for managers across the business previously. We can do external. We have coaches internally as well. So we have about 15 coaches. I don't know if people realize that, but they don't just specialize in sales. They've got years and years of experience in different areas of business as well. So executive coaching and personal development coaching as well. So please do reach out if you think someone would benefit from a bit of coaching. And then finally, things that you can implement within your teams are mentoring. So set them up with a mentor, whether in your team or external to your team. If you reach out to other teams and you recognize someone that's really good at something in a certain skill set, ask if they'll spend some time doing a little bit of mentoring for someone. It could be a coffee once a month for them to go through and just give some guidance and advice to that person. Setting up some shadowing as well, and being able to recognize teams that could help build people in your team as well, and perhaps setting up where they can go and sit with them for half a morning or learn a bit more about what they do. That can really help them as well in their roles. And finally, one that we often forget, but is something that actually helps with learning, it's something called action learning, but getting them involved in projects that help with that skill set. So either teaming them up with someone who's already working on that area that they want to develop in, or giving them a brand new project to work on as well that will help them with those skills development capabilities as well. So they're just some of the training tools that you already have available to you today. Like I said, if you want any guidance or help with it, or you want any advice on what to do and what to offer, please do reach out and we can help you start to build that in for your personal development plans as well. Okay, so on that note then, we're going to start going over to our panel to share some of their experiences and what they've done. So we're going to kick off with Maria first. Maria's our Chief of Staff. And if we want to just stop sharing the slides, and then if Maria, if you want to come on camera, and I'll hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. So as Sheila and Chloe mentioned, I'm going to talk to you about 360s. So this is a really useful tool that I use all the time because I used it in my previous company and I found it really, really helpful. This is not only this is especially helpful for those situations where, you know, measuring performance is not as easy to do like on a quantitative basis or things like that, and where for the role really skills are really, really important. Of course, skills are really important for every role, but there are some roles that you can really measure performance as, you know, how they're doing on improving their skill set. So basically how it works, and I'll just very briefly tell you how I structure mine. If anyone at any point wants any thoughts on how to structure theirs, I'm super happy to help. But basically it starts with the skills. The skills are the most important thing, the most important part of 360. So first of all, make sure that the person knows what skills they are, like you think are important for them to develop and that are important for their role. Obviously, they should know from when they recruited, etc. But have that conversation in one of your one-to-ones. So I'll give you an example. So in my previous role and like the kind of project management roles that I've been managing here, the skills are quite similar. So the skills that I find important for that role are. So first, and this is probably important for the whole company, but this is customer centricity. So this is the first skill that I test. Then there's problem solving and insight. So when you come across something that might be a blocker, how do you solve it? Or if there's a new process that needs to be designed, like how do you go about and design it? Then there's communications. So how effectively they communicate to stakeholders, how effectively they communicate in presentations if they need to do them, or in team meetings, etc. Then obviously there's project management, like there's, I don't know, this is the thing that they need to deliver. Do they keep timelines? Do they keep do they have their project organized, the milestones, etc. A very important one, again, for probably everyone in the company, stakeholder management. Like, do you keep people informed of what you're doing? Do you, for the decisions that need to happen in the things that you're delivering, are you involving the people that might have a say in this? Like, if you know that whatever you're doing impacts another area, are you asking them? Are you making them part of the conversation, etc.? So these are the main skills. So I start with, you know, having a conversation about the skills and like, how do they feel in general in these skills? Do they think there's another skill that is important to highlight, etc.? And then after that, after you have a mutual, you know, understanding of what are the skills that are important for this role, you also ask, like, is there any of these areas that you think are, you know, are your strengths? Like, where do you think you're more confident in these areas? And which ones of these areas do you think you want to develop further? As Chloe and Sheila said before, like, the whole point of this is not, you know, finding out where they're not doing well, or telling them you're not good in this. It's giving them opportunities to develop the things that they might want to develop, but more importantly of all, understand what their strengths are and make sure that they can even become even stronger in that and become an outlier in that. So very tactically, what I do is send the following questions in. I put it in a Google form because it's easy, it's anonymous, and I can send it over to, and the typical people I send it over to is any stakeholders that they work with in the business. So anyone who's either like their peers or seniors who they need to work with on different things, to all their peers if they're in a team, or everyone who they work with, which is maybe in the same level of seniority. And if they would manage anyone, this is also really useful to send to their direct reports, because there might be things that you just don't have, you just don't see as a line manager, and that might be easy to see if you ask direct reports as well. So the first question in the form that I ask are, what are their strengths? And please share examples. Examples are really important, because then when you're having a debrief, you can talk about them. So, and like I said, this should all be focused on really on the strengths rather than like the weaknesses. It should be more like, these are your strengths, and let's see how we can work together to work in the areas of development. So that's the first one. The second is, what are the areas of development? Again, please share examples where possible. And then what I do is put all the skills and ask the people. Obviously, there's some that don't apply, so always put a non-apply, doesn't apply, because maybe they didn't see it in action. But I put a list of all the skills and then ask, how would you rate this person compared to their peers? So from 1 to 5, etc. And also, of course, this is something that you should fill in as well. You as a line manager will have the most examples and the best view, but again, it's useful to get feedback from probably the rest of the company. And then just a last kind of like free text, where if they have any further comments or examples on any of the skills. So what I do after this is all anonymous. I read through it. I kind of get obviously some things. If you think it's better to communicate in a different way, I kind of like digest it a little bit, put it in a form, and then share it with the person prior to having the one-to-one, to make sure that they have time to process it as well. Again, if you have any questions or want to see any of the forms, happy to share. I'll pass over to Alex now. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm just unmuting myself. Sorry, I'm just getting my video ready. Hi everyone, I'll just chat for a couple of minutes because I know we're running short of time. People might be a bit hungry for lunch. I just want to give kind of 3 tips around performance management and 360 feedback. So the first one with 360 feedback and performance management in general that I've found useful is thinking about what kind of feedback and communication style is going to be most helpful for that individual. So the model that Maria was just talking about, where you're asking people to rank on a quantitative scale, gives people some numbers to base their performance on, which might be helpful for people that are very kind of analytical and like to know where they stand and can understand information better in that way, versus someone who might like colorful descriptions of how they're performing, and that's where verbatim feedback comes really useful. Other people might like more, I guess, science-based feedback. So think about if they've done any like personality tests or Myers-Briggs, which can often highlight potential challenges in a working style, and you might be able to base your feedback around that as well. So just kind of think about the communication style that's going to be most useful to that individual and what's going to, I guess, make the most sense for them. Handing over 3 pages of verbatim commentary might not be particularly useful for people, and you need to be more specific and quantitative for them. The second thing that I've been trying to do a lot more of, and I know we were talking about not doing it either 6 monthly or annually, is trying to do it at the end of a very big project. So instead of it making it a general 6 monthly or quarterly conversation, having development conversations at the end of a major project. So then that conversation is specifically around how do you think that went, what didn't work well. And so you can be having these in your one-to-ones, I guess, more regularly, but it's something that I'm trying to do at the very end. I don't know if any of you remember from university or study you might have done, often you do a big group assignment, and then at the end you'd have to write an individual reflection on, well, did I actually contribute effectively to that? What could I have done differently? And I think if you're doing that smack bang at the end of the project, it might be a bit fresher in people's mind, and you can get your stakeholder feedback then as well. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on is I get asked to do 360 feedback for people all the time. I find about every 12 months, it's maybe 9 to 12 months, I have something new to say, unless it's specifically around a project. So if you ask me just for general feedback on somebody, probably every 12 months I've got something new to say. So just think about how regularly you're asking people to give 360 feedback on others, and at what time is the best to do that. You know, Christmas, when everyone's really busy and everybody's doing it, you know, I got like 10 at one point, and I probably wouldn't have given it as much thought because I was ripping through them so quickly. So just think about your timing and what you're asking other people. And then there are some people here that I think are really brilliant. So I find sometimes providing constructive feedback or areas of improvement a little challenging. So then what I'll often do is think about, well, what would I like to do with them next? And what would I like to see more of? And what projects would I like them to be more involved with? And that's still a way that you can give like feedback and insight into other managers' people development without necessarily thinking, oh, this person's not doing this way. If that's, if you're struggling to find constructive ways to develop that individual, think instead around like, what would you like to do more with them, and what other projects would they benefit from being involved in? And that can help with someone's development as well. So that's it from me. I will now hand over to Lucy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Hello. Okay, so yeah, again, conscious of time, so I just wanted to really quickly touch on maybe slightly the other side. And a lot of previous roles I've had a bit of experience in slightly difficult conversations and having to implement a couple of performance improvement plans. And like the guys have been saying, I've often integrated these with 360 feedback, and I think these have really helped to deliver some really effective performance management. And I think with the whole performance improvement plans, I think sometimes they're kind of like little dreaded conversations. There's a lot of stigma attached to them, that they're really scary and really negative and sort of a sign of punishment. So I think in trying to implement these straight away, that's the first thing I do, is try and remove that stigma and try and reframe them in a really positive light, so that employees understand that it is just sort of another coaching tool, and that we're there and we care and we want to bring out the best in them, even if they're, you know, maybe not quite on the top of their game. We know that they can do it, and we want to bring it out in them, and we want to support them in that. And I think in order to do that, creating the structure for performance improvement plans comes from really effective questioning and communication that is designed to make it a really employee-driven process, so that they've got maximum investment in it and it's as effective as it can be, but also showing that, you know, you'll want to play your part in supporting them as well. So questions I've asked have often been things like, why do you think we're implementing this plan? What can I do to help and support you through this process? And what would you like to get would you like us to get out of this process? And it takes that whole, there's enough of a focus on the individual, but it also shows that you're there and you want to be as actively engaged as well to help them through this process. So I've previously had to use this for an employee who was sort of acting out, pushing back, and being quite unreasonably frustrated with colleagues. And in sort of speaking to them and reframing it in a way that they can see the bigger picture of their actions, they were sort of able to understand how what they were doing was affecting other people, and also express sort of why they feel like they were doing that, which turned out to be feelings of stagnation or being overlooked. and not being supported enough in their development. So based on this kind of better understanding across both parties, we were able to collaboratively create a framework that consisted of expectations set out by management, but also goals set by the employee and expectations from the employee for better support. And then obviously once we've kicked this off, we use sort of monthly check-ins, which combine 360 feedback from employees across the business to make sure that the feedback was fair and honest and varied, and again, didn't feel like an attack or a kind of punishment sort of thing. And yeah, ascertaining the best methods of communication and motivation for this employee meant I was able to deliver the feedback really constructively. So for this person, it worked out to be really direct, but also making sure that it was constantly feeding into the bigger picture, which helped them really frame and understand things a lot better. And actually from the implementation of this and alongside all the feedback, they used it to actually really push themselves, and ended up doing some voluntary work with another department, which gave a real big resurge in motivation and respect for everybody else. And they ended up getting a part-time role, a paid part-time role with that other department that they could do alongside their current role. And that really helped to boost positivity, motivation. And it was also like a good sort of thing to inspire other colleagues around to see this sort of boost in productivity and just general positivity. So yeah, there's a little short but sweet example of how I've approached this before. And now I can hand back to Sheila, I believe.
Yeah, Sheila or Matt, I don't know. I can finish this off. Thank you, first of all, very much, Lucy, and all of our speakers. And thanks everybody for staying on. I know we've run slightly over. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's a huge topic. So I'm not totally surprised that's happened. I just want to finish off, if I just bring up my screen one more time, by just recapping on some of the resources available to you. So as we mentioned, there's an Office 5 feature video, so how to use like one-to-ones, performance management guides available here for both employees and managers, the templates, so personal development plan template. On the terminal, if you haven't logged in yet, you'll actually see we've got a full site for the Leadership Lounge. So all resources are on there, all recordings and things will be on there, and all the templates and things we've mentioned today are on there. And then, as Sheila mentioned, there's some really, really great LinkedIn courses. So here's one on setting OKRs, for example. So we will send these out to you along with the recording of today's session. I know we've run over, but if anybody wants to ask any quick questions, I'm happy to stay on. Just pop them in the chat box. Otherwise, I think have a great afternoon, everybody. Haven't seen any questions come in. Welcome to Slack, Sheila or I, at any point. Okay, have a great day. Thank you very much.